Hi, this is Kim with Everything Etsy, and I'm here with Tim, my sweet husband, who handles all the techie side of Everything Etsy. And he's going to help out today explaining about SEO. And I'm going to kind of help out so that everybody can understand what he's saying about SEO.
What, you don't think I'm going to be crystal clear? I try.
Well, sometimes it's a little over my head, so maybe it's over some other people's heads too. So go ahead and give us an idea about how we would use keyword research to improve our Etsy sales.
Okay, and that's the title of a post we did back in, gosh, it's been a little over a year ago, January of 2010, using keyword research to improve Etsy sales. And somebody contacted me yesterday through the new Everything Etsy directory asking about SEO services, and I was explaining to that wonderful Etsy seller that SEO services are a crazy thing because they can be really time consuming, and sometimes you don't see any results, and they can be expensive, and you have to really be ready to put a lot into it if you're going to hire a professional to do that. But you really don't have to hire a professional because it's the basics of it, at least, aren't that difficult. So I asked her if I could use her Etsy shop and her blog as an example to show you guys how to do some of this stuff. So this is the post, and I'll put a link to that in the post with the video, and it has some of the tools that I'm going to use here to show you. But without further ado, let's just start with Beth's Etsy shop. We're here at Elizabeth's website and Etsy shop, and I'm going to show you what she's doing wrong.
Oh, goodness, this is that nice. Okay.
So I told her I was going to say that.
We're going to give out some tips.
Oh.
And actually, Tim's going to give out the tips. I'm just going to chime in.
Okay. So you will notice all her, I've got this in list view so that you can see, but you'll notice all of her item listing titles. Is that what they're called, Kim? Listing titles?
I believe so.
Okay, listing titles. So when you start a listing, at the top of it, you've got to give it a title, and this is what shows up here. So this is very important. That's the most important part of your listing, is the title. And then what you put in the item description is very important too, but the title is the most important thing. And if you look at the very top of the screen, you'll see we're using Google Chrome. In Internet Explorer, this is going to be more prominent. But you'll see at the top of the page it says handcrafted vintage style. Okay, so this is the title of this page, and that's for her whole shop. Now when we click on an item like these earrings, you'll see the title at the top is Pink and Green Vintage Inspired Morning Glory by Elizabeth. So that's the title, Pink and Green Vintage Inspired Morning Glory Earrings. And if you go back to her whole shop, you'll see that she does that quite a bit. She starts with on sale vintage style snow white rose, pink petunia earrings, chic.
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 Let's go with chic.
Chic, pink and silver glass glitter hard lock. It just shows how chic I am.
I know, you're really into the earrings.
Marley pink rose. Anyway, so you'll see that these item titles aren't really descriptive and short and sweet of what the item itself is. So what you want to do is you want your item title to be very descriptive of what the item is, relatively short, and you want to try and have it match what someone might search for if they were searching in the search engine for something like this. So when I look at it,
they're probably not going to type in pink and green.
Yeah, what do you think they'd look for?
Well, I actually think pink and green would be better in a tag.
Right, but what would you maybe think they might search for?
Maybe vintage-inspired earrings.
Exactly. That's what I thought too.
That's what you thought too when you were looking for earrings.
I thought they probably searched for vintage earrings, but that's not what these are. So truth in advertising, you can't name this vintage earrings if they're not vintage, but you can say vintage-inspired. So.
And they are very pretty.
They're beautiful, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to I don't know whether I want to show you first what happens. I think I'll show you first what happens in Google. If you go to Google and type in vintage flower earrings, you'll notice that the second listing right at the very top is an Etsy shop. And that's because Etsy has got some very strong SEO. It's got huge page rank, which is a measure of a site's authority. And if you do your tags right, your site titles right, you can really rank in Google for searches like this. And you'll notice what comes up here. It says vintage style jewelry flower earrings. So right in the very title tag, it
maybe
says,
even starting with vintage is, just the
that's
the
you.
key
You want to
thing
put
right
the
there.
key word right there in the beginning, and as close to the actual key phrase you're targeting right in the very beginning that you can do, the better. So the way that you can decide that, I mean, you can just, if you want to do this in a hurry, which sometimes you're in a hurry, right, Kim?
I'm always in a hurry.
Yeah. So you don't have to go through all these steps of keyword research. You can just, guess and just make it a habit.
And maybe just think what you might be looking for is probably one of the best ideas.
Right, like what somebody might search for if they're searching for something.
I know sometimes I accidentally, without thinking, will put sale or on sale, stuff like that at the beginning of a listing, which is
you can
not
put it at
so
the
good.
end. Don't put it first. The first few words are the most important in the eyes of search engines. So if you're going to put that kind of stuff, like colors or descriptions, or words like sale or special, put them at the end. You can see here that this comes up. So, and this isn't exactly, my search is vintage flower earrings. And nothing here, well, this at the very top one does say tiny vintage flower earrings. If you had a post, or I'm, so much time on blogs, I think, in terms of posts. If you had a listing on Etsy titled vintage flower earrings, and that was the end of your title, it's very likely that you would be here at the top. So if anybody's got vintage flower earrings, give it a try.
And also, doesn't it help if you have, say, you have vintage flower earrings in gold, vintage pink flower? I don't know if you have more than one of the same type of.
Whatever search term you're trying to target. So you kind of want to try and hit something that's going to get a good bit of search traffic. And let me show you how you figure out what those things are, because you might find out that 10 people a month search for vintage flower earring gold,
right.
And so you might not make any money with that. So although somebody searching for vintage flower earrings might be willing to buy a gold one or a red one or whatever. So there's a tool that's linked to from that post that I'll link it again in the new post, but it's called the Google Keyword Research Tool. And I've already started a search for vintage flower earrings. And as you can see, now over here on the side, once you put in your search, you've got some options for broad, exact, or phrase. The best one to go with for your purposes is phrase. Broad is going to give you the results with any of those words, in any combination or with other words. Exact will be only in that order, and phrase, exact will be only that. So gold vintage flower earrings would not show up here if you put exact, whereas gold vintage flower earrings would show up if you put phrase, because the phrase vintage flower earrings is in the search query. Am I getting too detailed?
Yes, a little bit, but it's okay. It's okay. Maybe not for some people, but
you're starting to zone out on me.
Just a tad, but it's okay. I really do like this page, though. I think that's so interesting how you can kind of look up and see how many people are searching for something. Even though I've never used it,
you haven't?
I have seen you use it, and I think it's very cool. I've never used it. I think it's really neat.
So anyway, okay. I'm just thinking of how much money is not in our bank account because she didn't do this properly. But anyhow,
it has to be worth a few extra moments to kind of get an idea.
Yeah. Well, and again, if you don't have the time, you can just guess at it. But this is how you know. So you'll see here that flower earrings itself is 54 local searches. Local is the USA. 5,400 local searches. Now your screen may show up with some different columns here, but local monthly searches will be one of them. And that's really the main thing you want to look at right now. You just want things with lots of searches. You can actually click on this and organize this whole thing in order of searches, and you'll see what people search for the most. So vintage jewelry is something that people search for quite a bit.
Vintage jewelry, that might be.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to name. You want to be accurate about what's in your actual.
Right, and if there are a lot of people searching for it, is it harder to get to the top of that page, of that Google search page, because maybe there are more people
It can be. It can be. If there's a lot of pages on the internet that are have that same title and that are basically dealing with the same subject matter that the search target is, then it can be very hard to rank for that. And that's what SEO is all about. And I'll show you one of the keys to that is getting links to the page that tell search engines that that page is indeed about that subject. And I'll show you how to do that, or I'll give you a quick tip on how to do that here in a second. But as you go down this list, you can just look for things that fit. Flower earrings fits. It's 5,400 search people. Look for 5,400 searches a month in the USA for the term flower earrings.
Now, if you have vintage flower earrings, well, they're not exactly vintage, so you really can't.
But you could put what I would do probably in this case, because flower earrings is so high up here, and vintage earrings or vintage flower is pretty good too.
Right, both of those seem good to me.
I would probably go with that particular item. Let's look back at that again. Where's it at? Right here. I would probably call that. Let me go back to the Google tool. Flower earrings, and then I would put vintage inspired. So I would name that item Flower Earrings Vintage Inspired. And that would probably be the best search term for that.
Right, because then you're kind of hitting both of those, and you're describing your item.
Yeah, and so that's basically the most important thing you can do on Etsy for SEO, is naming those item titles right.
And actually, you get a lot of chances. So she has how many items? 124 items in her shop. So that really does give you quite a few chances to kind of, be found by somebody. And the only thing they have to do is find your shop once to take a look around and say, well, maybe I want something else that's here, or I'm going to, mark this as a favorite and come back to it later. So getting them in there is definitely one of the things you want to do.
One of the things we want to mention also is in your item description. So let's go back quickly to that Google AdWords page, and we'll look at more items. Now you can go up here in this search phrase box and try a bunch of different things to find out what works. And sometimes you might want to pick something that's got a big search number, but like Kim said, I mean the more people that search for something, oftentimes the harder it is to rank. So you might want to go down all the way down to something that's 1,000 searches a month. That's enough to make some money with. And if you find something on here that is more accurate, then you might want to use it.
Right, because accurate is good, and if that's what they're looking for, you want to give them what they're actually looking for.
Absolutely. You want to be as accurate as you possibly can, but you want to use a phrase that is, going to be searched for. So, and then the next thing you want to do, once you've picked out your title for your item, for your listing, is you want to write your listing description, your item description. And you want to try and include some of these phrases in that item description. So if you've got a blue rhinestone in your item, you want to put that in there. You put blue this includes a blue rhinestone. Right. You just want to make sure that you use those exact phrases in the item description. You want to try and do that 2 or 3 different phrases. You don't want to be real repetitive, say blue rhinestone 5 different ways. You want to just,
make them go, what is she trying to say?
Yeah, sometimes, and you'll see that sometimes you're looking on the internet, things that just, they don't even read right because they've got the same words in it over and over again. And, that's not what you want to do. So, because you've also not only got to get somebody to this with a search engine, but you want to actually sell it.
Yeah,
so
you don't want to scare them off.
Right. Anyway, you want to pick a few more of those phrases and use them in your item description. So that's it. That's all you do on Etsy for SEO. So that's just how you set up your item, and if you just do that over and over again, and that's all you do.
Just keep repeating it, and that you're going to get somebody to come and buy something from you that way.
Yeah, that's just part of it anyway. Photography, listing plenty, having a lot of items in your shop.
Don't get me started on that.
Okay, we won't start talking about that.
Her photography is great,
Beth
so we're not saying
very
anything
nice
about that.
Yeah, very good photography.
Right.
So that's all you have to do on Etsy, and if that's all you do, that's great. That's going to be much better than if you're not doing it right. But there's another thing you can do if you've got a blog, which most of you do, and if you don't, you really should.
You really, really should.
Yeah.
We could go on and on about that as well, but blogs really are a big help when it comes to selling on Etsy. And that was really one of the main reasons we started a blog.
Yeah, our very
years
first
ago.
blog
It was
was
forever ago,
you know,
but it was years ago now.
Kim came to me one day and said, I think I'm going to try and sell some stuff on Etsy. And I said, what's Etsy? And this is only a little more than a couple years ago. And she told me what it was, and I said, okay, whatever, back to doing whatever I was doing. And right?
Little did you know.
Yeah, you're right. Who knew? Here we are. And so we started the blog, and then a couple weeks later, she says, Tim, a lot of these people that are selling on Etsy, they have a blog to talk about their stuff and get attention. And I said, what's a blog?
And I had to learn how to download photos, and it was quite the ordeal.
we did find out that she was right. She's very smart, and that was good. Etsy is great, and blogs are a great way to market. So we'll go. Beth does have a blog, and so I'm going to go and look at her blog, and this is her blog on Blogspot, and one of the first things that I noticed is that it's got everything Etsy buttons on there.
I was like, oh, that's wonderful.
Another one further down, so we're on here more than once, which makes this a
excellent blog.
Excellent blog, very good blog. So anyway, one of her posts here talks about an item. It's a very beautiful item, and you'll notice, or I noticed as I looked through it, and maybe I missed it, but I ran my mouse all over this post and nothing popped up as a link.
Oh.
So she's got a post about her items and she doesn't link to it.
And they need to know how to get there for each one, really, after each picture. I mean, why not throw that in there, or can't you link the photos?
You can link the photos. That's not done. So anyway, she put a lot of effort in and put some real pretty pictures on here, and those are pictures actually from her Etsy shop, but didn't link to them. So further down, there's another one. And this one she does link to it. So she's got this real beautiful heart with a rose on it. It's really pretty, and then underneath it she's got a link.
Okay, can I say something?
Sure. Yeah.
I might have taken the link and maybe just put Rose of My Heart necklace and made that a link light up.
Well, that's what I'm getting ready to talk about.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Be my guest.
Yeah. So you want to put the title, and in this case the title is Rose of My Heart necklace. But what you really want to do is reinforce the title that you're trying to, the search phrase that you're trying to target. So if we've gone and we've said, okay, vintage flower earring, is that what we said? Vintage
flower earring.
Yeah. Okay. If that's what we're targeting, and that's the title of our post.
So if these were those earrings, we want to put vintage flower earrings.
That's right. We would want the anchor text of the link to be vintage flower.
Anchor text. Wow, who knew that's what that was?
Yeah,
okay,
the words that actually link are called your anchor. It's your anchor text, and you want that to say what you're pointing at. So instead of saying link here and making the word here a link, you'd rather say check out.
I used to do that.
Yeah, and that's not terrible, but it's better to say. To make the link say what's at the other end of the link. So say, vintage flower earrings, and make the words vintage flower earrings the link. The bottom line, all this is to say that every time you list an item on Etsy, if you've got a blog, unless you're listing 100 items a day, go to your blog and write a post about that and put it on there. Now, a plug for WordPress blogs. If you have a WordPress blog, it creates a page, a separate page on your website for that post. Each post has a page of its own. That's and I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I've checked on it, but I don't think, does a Blogger blog do that? Yes, it does. So Blogger blog does this too. So that creates a page, and it's an additional link to that item. So anyway. So forget what I was saying about WordPress, although I think WordPress is awesome. So anyway, that's really the gist of it. So the title is the most important thing. The next most important thing is your item description, that you use some of those good phrases in your item description. And then the next thing that you can do to really boost that is put a link back to that item on your shop. And then
the more links, the better.
Yeah.
If you have a friend that has a blog, maybe they want to link to you too. Or if you do a giveaway on another blog, that link is very valuable. So all that comes into play as far as the SEO,
Yeah, the
right?
more links you can get, and you know, one thing, if we're probably running out of our video time limit here for YouTube. Maybe we'll end up on Vimeo because we need more time. But I want to show you back here on this link. This is ranked #2 for a pretty good search term, and I looked and saw that this is actually linked to that link goes to the home page of her Etsy shop. You know, her actual shop page instead of an item. And if you sell a lot of the same things, your site description, right over here, it says the vintage jewelry box, vintage style jewelry, flower, earrings, floral necklaces. That's what got that to the top of Google.
Right, and she seems to have a lot of flower, vintage-looking jewelry, so that's why she chose that.
Yeah.
And really, so at least you are getting to.
And she's been there since
something.
2007. So the longer you're there with the same keywords, the better you'll do. So your Etsy shop will do better if you sell very similar items. You know, you kind of stick with a niche, and if you know the longer you're there, the better it'll do. So don't worry if you try and do something and it doesn't show up right away. You just be patient. SEO is a long-term game.
Right, and a lot of times you'll notice 6 months later something shows up and you know it wasn't there at all.
That's right. You know, you'll do it and you think, oh, this didn't work.
What a waste.
Yeah, definitely times we felt that way. And then, you know, months later when you've completely forgotten about it, that work starts to pay off. And that's how SEO work often does. So hopefully this has been helpful.
Yeah, I hope it did help with just a few tips to kind of get you started. There's a lot to it, and of course there's always a lot to selling on Etsy, and that's why we have a whole blog with lots of tips, because there's always the photos and your descriptions, and we can go on and on.
Yeah.
So I hope, you know, that was...
If this has been good, and if this has been helpful for you, and you like the format of Kim and I kind of going through some stuff like this, let us know. And you know, if it's helping people, we'll do more of it. Okay?
Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.